doesn't really own it, and yet they still spend, and one of our brackets sells at $30 a piece. So they're buying that just to change a bit of their game experience. So the idea of a digital asset that you can own seemed a logical step forward. Because they're spending $30 on an asset that they're essentially renting from us. How much would they spend if they could actually resell it later and get involved in that? And then the other thing for us is about changing the value exchange between us and the consumer. At the moment, as I said, it's very much from us to them. They just consume, we just sell. And that's a bit simplistic. There are better ways of doing it. There are more people involved in the relationship between us. So we have influencers that work with us and don't necessarily get paid. Some of our users are advocates of our services. And how do they get a stake in our community that they are part of? And that's obviously a big win that can be delivered through sort of tokenization, where there's a value exchange. So that's, in a nutshell, as we see it.
As well. So I think kind of to expand upon some of Paul's points, one of them being that there's a renewed and changed relationship between the publisher and the player. So I think some of the best examples that I've seen in the past have been, for example, one of them is the Reality Clash team. There's another one that is, if I can remember it to the top of my head. Oh yes, the Lucid Sight team. So with Cryptic Conjure, it changes the sort of relationship between players and the publishers. They immediately become a stakeholder in the kind of title that you're making. So they had a non-fungible token, for example, some time ago called Council of Nine. And that premise on its own doesn't sound that amazing. But when you think about just what it allows that single player to do, it sounds utterly insane from a centralized standpoint. It allows them to make decisions within the game. It allows them to vote on particular developments or updates or balance into in-game assets. And that allows the player to really let their voice be heard in the gaming community. I think that's something that is really advantageous for a publisher. You get to directly know who your player is and build the game specifically for them. And I think that in itself is another segment of it too, which is that it changes the kind of way and the kind of people that a developer and a publisher are beholden to. In a more conventional sense, they are beholden to stockholders or investors, meaning they have to make key changes in order to ensure profitability. But when it comes to a publisher on a decentralized or blockchain style format, it allows you to be accountable to your players. So it makes something that's a lot more purpose-built for them. I think that's something that's truly revolutionary about blockchain that you can't get from any other kinds of systems, although as a journalist I'm inclined to be really up for being proven wrong.
I think, to go back to what Paul was saying, games have historically been a sandbox, and if you earned or purchased objects within the game, they only existed within that game sandbox. If that game ceased to exist, those objects ceased to exist. Any money that you spent on those objects disappeared. I mean, to give you a pretty good example, my 9-year-old son spends probably a lot more money than he should do with skins in Fortnite. I'm sure I'm probably not the only father who spends too much money on that. But if Fortnite shut down as a game, that money is wasted. I have no rights to those skins. So being able to break the walls of that sandbox and being able to take an object and have that skin that I own, obviously that gives me the ability to trade it, the ability to own it, even if the game doesn't exist anymore. But there's also other opportunities to start to use objects between games. So potentially, if I could use my Fortnite skin in a non-Fortnite related game. It could be that I've now got myself driving around in a car and I'm not doing it, or it could be that I'm doing first-person shooter. So those are further options. From a game publisher's perspective, I guess the two big challenges, especially for independents, that I've heard about are, number one is how do you attract people into your game, because it's an incredibly crowded marketplace, the number of apps on the App Store. And number two is how do you generate alternative revenue streams. So for the first point, you can actually start to use objects outside the game sandbox to market the game itself. Imagine that you drop a weapon for a game in the middle of Hyde Park, and people can go and sort of pick it up Pokemon Go style, and and then bring it into the game world and start to activate it. Like, imagine you can scan a billboard and pull an extra life off that billboard and bring that into the game. So that has opportunities to sort of drive engagement of new gamers. The other side is around revenue generation, and if you look at the amount of money that's being spent in advertising, I think it's about $350 billion a year is spent on advertising, 50% of that is digital, 80% of that 50% goes to two companies, Google and Facebook. If you're able to start to channel some of that revenue into your game, there's opportunities to do things like in-game product placement, in-game advertising, which represent new revenue streams for the independent. So rather than just annoying people with adverts, you can start to actually bring stuff into the game which generates revenue, but actually supports the game and supports the experience.
So, like good jazz band. Now I'm going to break it down. So I want to step back, I think, a little bit, because the points that have been made are excellent. And they're very, as a gaming company, I feel like I completely relate to all of those points, but they're very specific to the opportunities that gamers have utilizing blockchain technology. Let me make it a little bit more general. I think the reason that we as a game company decided to start embracing blockchain as a way that could enhance game experiences for our users is very simple. We saw this world of blockchain which was largely fintech driven, and it looked awfully similar to our world of mobile gaming. They're both about 10 years old, they're both about $100 billion globally, and they're both still perceived as niche. Although, in fact, blockchain is still kind of niche, and gaming is about 5 billion people, so it's not that niche, actually. Mobile gaming, specifically. But those two overlapping circles, as of 2017, only overlapped around some crypto keys, and that was it, right? So you got these $200 billion circles, and we thought, that makes no sense, right? These circles should have a much bigger overlap, because gamers actually understand soft currency, we call it premium currency in a game. Everybody goes into a game and spends quote-unquote real money for fake money in a game, right? And they do so willingly and have been doing so for more than a decade in Asia and around 10 years in most other countries. And so it's not going to be a stretch for them to embrace the idea of alternate currency. So we took that and we thought, how can we use blockchain in games? And let's just think of a very simple premise. Mobile gaming now is about $100 billion, and the idea of non-fungible tokens or ownership of content, all this stuff is great. We're big advocates of it. But for a very simple reason. Right now, people spend a certain amount in games. Maybe I spend $10 a month playing a game, right? And that's a sunk cost, right? I spend it on content, it disappears, it's a license to content, I don't really own it. So here's the simple premise. If I could own the content and there was a chance that I could sell the content later and not make money, if I just got 10 cents on the dollar, right? I got $1 back for that $10 I spent. Would I spend $11 in the first place? That's what interests us. Because if we do, then that adds $10 billion to our industry right there. Because that's a 10% increase in top line revenue growth, and mobile gaming is not that sexy anymore. We still grow at 30 to 40% a year, but in mobile gaming terms, that's not attractive. And so I think that's an area that we find very exciting. So we have made bets across the industry, both in-house games we produce ourselves, as well as making investments in everybody who we think does interesting things.
Yeah, Robby, there's some really good points you made there at the end with regards to revenue and giving users an exit where it used to be very closed. You know, if you buy something in a game, the only thing you could do was trade it for something else in that game or go back to some virtual tokens in that game, because publishers wanted to lock you into their ecosystem. They thought that's the best way of making money. But there's been many examples, particularly with kind of like grey market selling of Counter-Strike sourced skins and guns and things like that, where they realized that if you could give these players an exit route to fiat or to just allow them to monetize those assets again, they'd spend way more money in the primary market than they thought by putting these barriers up. So I've seen that firsthand. I think that's one of the really interesting parts about blockchain, and especially in gaming. The other one which is really interesting is the lack of grey markets and black markets on the publisher's end, right? So they sell these assets and they don't want you to trade them with other people outside their ecosystem. But you know, people find a way of doing these things and they became very, very profitable businesses. Now, with NFTs on the blockchain, you can program in a resale value or a distribution of a fee back to the publisher, no matter who you sell it to. So all of a sudden, you've removed a huge grey market that they weren't monetizing before. They can now monetize that, they can be a part of it, so they're not concerned about whether you trade with somebody else on a different blockchain or for a different game in general. So from a revenue standpoint, it makes a ton of sense for the publishers. From a user standpoint, because I kind of think we kind of dabble in both sides, from a user standpoint, they get to own the item outright, so they'll probably pay more for it in the beginning. They can also now use it within different games, and like John says, you can, that kind of adds an element of marketing. We're not at the stage yet where games are supporting other people's assets yet, which I think is really the next step, and it will take some time. I'm not sure how the publishers will feel about incorporating other people's assets. That's a different kind of story, but that's certainly where we're going with it, and I think.
Because there's one fundamental question, which is the business model. Because at the moment, when we sell tennis rackets, for instance, we sell one to everybody that wants to buy one, and so we're making the full sale value every time. So now, if it was a resaleable item, we may be able to make a mark on every transaction, but the full original sale cost is in the secondary market is not necessarily coming back to us. So that, for a number of publishers, is a shift in business model that they somewhat fear. And they fear it in the same way that they did 6, 7, 8 years ago when free-to-play came about, and they started, when people stopped selling games up front on mobile, and some of the revenue came in from in-app purchases from a freely distributed app. And some of the big names and the big publishers really struggled with that business model initially, and they were really struggling with, how am I going to make my money? I've just spent $100 million making this game, and you want me to give it away for free. And so there is that change in attitude in terms of how is the business model going to work, because it is, I'd like to sell a tennis racket for $100, but I don't just want to sell one.
I think that's one of the things that it was quite interesting as well, because a couple of years back we had at the London Blockchain Conference, we had Jared Skoda of BitGuild, and he brought up a couple of interesting facts, in that when it comes to this creation of a secondary market, that's not something that's brand spanking new with blockchain. It's just something that it's allowed to create and become a bit more legit. I mean, you have the secondary market on the likes of eBay or Amazon with the likes of RuneScape and World of Warcraft. All blockchain does is make that a bit more legit and create a bit more of a better way for publishers to make some money on that, because other than that, they were losing millions if not billions of dollars in a project that they should be part of. There's one good example that Brett Saylor gave for Forte, which is like an investment accelerator fund for blockchain games. He said that the centralized system at the moment represents more of a closed plan economy, and blockchain games allow for the creation of a free market. It's just about how to really sort out the minor details that exist at the moment.
Yeah, I totally agree with both those points. The other thing that we didn't mention as well, which I just want to add in, was the provable scarcity as well. So now, the publisher says to you, this is a rare item, there's only 4 of them, you can't prove that, and they could always make more in the future, right? Which I think is a really big deal for NFTs. I think NFTs will be big. I think SFTs, semi-fungible tokens, where you have like a limited run of 1 to 100 items, will probably be more prevalent, and people will set a certain more value on the first one than the 100th one. But that's another interesting point. So the next question I wanted to ask was around use cases and genres. So what do you guys think about the first use case in terms of what type of genres are you looking at, whether that be trading card games, first-person shooters, or other types of use cases that this technology and in-gaming will really kind of be the first to get adopted? Robby, do you want to?
Sure, I'll start. As you can tell from our company name, our focus is on brands. So we're the biggest licensee of third-party brands in mobile gaming. So in terms of blockchain, I think probably the most notable brand we've licensed to make blockchain games is Formula One. And we're taking a bit of a bet on sports because we think brands like Formula One or football, where we work with Bayern Munich and Bundesliga, are very interesting because they are very fan-driven. And we think that the low-hanging fruit over the next 12 to 18 months for NFTs particularly is going to be on collectability and rarity, because the catering to the super fans is going to help us stimulate growth in the industry in general before it's adopted on a mass scale. Because I think we do have certain things to work out. Onboarding is terrible, right? There are 30, 35 million wallets out in the world, which is roughly the same as the number of web browsers in 1996, right? So it's a small economy out there, and there are many hurdles. We've worked very hard in mobile gaming so that when you go into the App Store, you're only 5 clicks away from being able to download and spend something in our games. And blockchain adds 50 more clicks and a copy of your driver's license on top of that. So those things are things we're sorting out right now. But as long as we can make the value proposition available to consumers, they will come. That's one of those things we find in why we think games are actually going to be the medium that sort of stimulates the adoption of blockchain technology into a mass consumer audience, because like video cassette recorders or digital payments or all these technologies we've seen in the last 30 years, most of them have been driven by consumer entertainment demand. Because at the end of the day, they want to watch movies, they want to play games, and that's what stimulates them to try out some new technology.
So I think in terms of the use cases, the different genres of gaming, I mean, I'm fairly rusty in my gaming. I think the last game I played probably was GoldenEye on the Nintendo 64. So that dates me. It's still my favorite. It's still my favorite. We have, as a technology platform, we work with various different games developers. We're seeing stuff across multiple genres. We've got guys who are working on sort of space trading type games. We've got people who are developing first-person shooters, a lot of mobile games. So there isn't really a specific genre. I guess the attributes that you're looking for is you're looking for, obviously it's got to be multiplayer, it's got to be networked, it's got to be completely internet aware, where you can have objects which actually follow logic outside of the game world. So, for example, using the football analogy, if you've got a player for the Bundesliga and in the real world that player ends up unfortunately breaking their leg or another part of their anatomy, if all of the individual digital objects of that player are updated out, on the blockchain, and the status is updated, that affects everybody's ability to play the game. Also, the ability to have objects to have their own intelligence and logic outside of the game world. So one of the things that we do with BlockV is, rather than just having a dumb NFT that sits there and represents ownership on the blockchain, we have the ability for objects to move and react in the real world. So they can actually have their own intelligent long-running processes completely independent of the game world. So you can start to move some of the logic out of the game into the object, which is pretty exciting stuff. So I think it's across use cases. What we'll also see is, when it comes to this whole multiplayer space, one of the areas that we're watching very closely is around augmented reality, but is around what I call city-scale AR. So once we get to a situation that AR moves off a rather a crap object on the coffee table into a situation where people can actually follow the same object around the streets, there's technology like 5G and edge computing which enables that. Then I think we're really going to see this go crazy.
I think there are certainly some words that we can really throw out there in talking about some of the real use cases that exist at the moment. One of them would be like viable fundraising, esports, live streaming, augmented reality as well. And I think for a couple of them, Animoca brands representing one of them, which is F1 Delta Time. So that, along with other titles like Battle Racers for, I think, with altitude games, what they demonstrate as well is some viable use cases for alternative means of investment or for engaging with your target audience. A couple of others include esports, for example. Some of them that we've noticed has been Gods Unchained. Before, I I think Bound Races pre-sale, they ended up selling one card called Hyperion for almost just a little bit underneath. Is anybody here familiar with Magic the Gathering? Oh, of course, some card games in here, nice. But anyway, they sold one of the cards called Black Lotus, and that was the only thing that really outmatched it. So you certainly see there's a lot of viability there in the world of esports. So that along with a couple of ones for augmented reality, there are certainly some really applicable use cases that we can already look to already. It's just a case of waiting to see them mature over time, I think.
Yeah, just to repeat the question in terms of genre, it's actually a really interesting question, because we've been, I come from a mobile background, predominantly mobile games background, and what we've seen in the last 6 years, it's all been around development of the monetization model within it. So that's where really people have been driving value in the mobile games market, which is why it's so big in dollar terms. But what this could really do is drive IP. So you start to attach value to intellectual property, whether that be a sports entity or a sports thing, or it's unsurprising that we're a sports games company, so that's why we're interested in it. Or whether it's other types of intellectual property that you want to bring into a game. But that's where non-fungibles come in, where you can start to attach that and give that away to players. So those kind of things make sense as a genre in terms of whether they're casual games or whether they're a little bit more sort of hardcore. I suspect in the first instance they're going to be more hardcore to mid-core games, because there is this fundamental friction in terms of getting people to do that. So it's you've got to list those people who are going to go set up their wallet are going to be highly engaged, and they are mid to hardcore players.
Sorry, just to add a bit more into this one, but the whole process of onboarding, as we previously discussed as well, the underlying lesson for some blockchain games is, for God's sake, get the user experience right, get the onboarding done. Because I think I was saying to, I forget who I was talking to this morning, but we were using the notion of the LinkedIn problem. Because there was an article that was going around a couple of years ago, which was talking about how long it takes for the average applicant to just go through the process of applying for a job before saying, you know what, this is just an utter waste of time, let's just get back out of it. And I think for every page that you go through of an application or an onboarding process, the more and more players you're going to lose, and that's a filter that this gaming space has to really get over. The plus side is we're already seeing some pretty amazing progress from, like Dapper, for example, is doing a lot more cross-collaboration between games, along with a couple of others, including Bisky, which works on quick access to non-fungible tokens as well as safe and secure storage. So it's good that we're already seeing progress in that way.
Yeah, I just want to because that's going to be our next question, so some good conversation already on that. For the genres, I'm glad we're in the same in the same boat. I'm very bullish on, sports trading cards, and I know Robby, your affiliation with Lucid Site and MLB Champions, that was one of the first use cases endorsed by Major League Baseball, and now they issue cards, and that's really driving two things. Obviously the younger crowd, they really like to engage with these assets that they can now own, they can track values, obviously based on fantasy football and things of that nature, but also, as we've also touched on, super fan engagement, being able to understand and reach out to in a non-intrusive way your top fans and offer them premium content or early access to tickets and things like that. And I'm aware of it happening in football now as well, so very, very bullish on that sector. I really like it. These are some really good use cases, and I think we're going to see that adoption starting to take place now. And then, as we also mentioned, God's Unchained by Few Games, right? They're kind of tapping into the Hearthstone network, a $400 million game, and I think that has instant kind of blockchain applicability. It's a trading, people want to trade those cards. If they can own them, then it kind of just seems even better. So those are the two use cases that I really like personally. And I think that brings me on to the next question, which is, how can you, now that we've defined, okay, there's some great use cases here, it makes a lot of sense. both on both sides of the market. How can we bring users in a frictionless way that enables them to get involved in an easy manner that doesn't require lots of blockchain experience? And I know that you guys have different experiences in trying to make that happen. So I'd love to get your perspective on it. So.
Yeah, our experience is that we worked on a project last year, so we built a prototype of doing this and to introduce this as one of our existing games. And the existing game has 300,000 daily active users, which at the time is significantly more than any of the stats out there which are driving users. But the technology that we were basing them on, which is the standard Ethereum technology, is limited in terms of its ability to scale and to bridge those sort of friction barriers. And for us, we're competing in a mobile space where virtually every millisecond, every step that a consumer has to take, additionally, will result in a lost user share. And you're doing that against everybody else. A huge marketplace with masses of content in there, and you're having to be different in that sense, and have to be, clean and easy to use. And there was just no way we could deploy that to our audience at that stage. So there is some major steps to go to be able to deploy it. But the main thing is, and the main thing I want to say is that I don't think any of our users would care what we call it. We don't need to use the terms. They don't care about the technology. They don't care about wallets. They don't care about any of those the elements of the technology. For them, it's all about user experiences. What can they do? What does it do for me? And if we can present that to them as frictionless as possible, then we start to get the scale.
It's very much akin to, and it's going to get into boring metaphors as well, but I mean, game developers really have to approach the leveraging of blockchain from the player's perspective like going for a dip in the seaside. Now, at the first moment, you're just stepping into really inch-high water, so the amount of knowledge you're going to have for blockchain is tenuous at best. All you're going to care about at that point is how it helps to enrich the gameplay experience. And as you go more and more into it, you can start to get more and more invested in what blockchain represents. And some of the examples we have of that would be like Loom, for example, or Wax, who have this sort of validation process where you can allow players to become more of a stakeholder behind the solution. But at early stages, they're not going to care about that. All they're going to think is how long it takes for the game to get set up, how long it takes for me to set up my account, and how I can dive into the experience in the quickest way possible. And I think some of the challenges that we have to that is, one, it's going up against a market that is billions and billions of dollars in value and has been working in perfecting the user experience for a long time. So it has to first run against that. But on the other side too is to make for an enriching enough experience to provide a use case that people are going to want to immediately circulate. And those seem to be a few of the initial challenges to begin with.
So I think in the conversations that we've had with games companies, there's been sort of two consistent projections, and actually heard these at Blockchain Gamer back in January. The first one is that is the onboarding process. The fact that if you, I know this is hallowed halls of EOS, but if I talk about Ethereum for a second, you need to go through and get a MetaMask account, you need to get a wallet set up, all of those things. It's a blocker to user engagement. And as has been said, there's these guys, people don't want to go through this process to play their favorite game. They don't want to sign up for this stuff, and they shouldn't have to. So what we think is, that is, we need an interface moment for the blockchain in the same way that the blockchain is a bit like the internet when it first started. It's screens and telnet. What we need is a web browser, and that's what we at BlockV have been endeavouring to build. So to get to a position where you can start to use digital objects within a game, literally by signing up with your phone number, with a Facebook profile, with an email address, and you can transfer objects just as easily. So if I want to send you a car or a sword, I can send it to you to a phone number or email address rather than having to try and send it via Ethereum or any else wallet. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is, we keep hearing about, is about cost. So, blockchain is expensive compared to running your own closed ecosystem. If you look at the cost of signing up and creating a wallet on EOS, you look at the cost of doing transactions on Ethereum, it doesn't make sense for every use case. And one of the things that we've tried to do with BlockV as an abstraction layer is to say, look, not every digital object that we have on our platform has to be on the blockchain. They can be off-chain or they can be on private chain. And that means that you can have one set of APIs as a business, as a developer that you can talk to. You might have 1 million objects out there which are completely commoditized and have no real value. Don't put those on the blockchain because people aren't going to trade them. If you've got 100 rare objects, put those on the blockchain. So we can get through that whole piece around getting users engaged and making the whole experience frictionless. And if we can get around the cost issue, make it easier for developers to talk to an object, be it blockchain or otherwise, then I think we get rid of a lot of the friction.
I think from our perspective, we make games, and we know how to make games, and hopefully we keep people entertained. And so I think we're very much taking a, if you build it, they will come approach to it, because the onboarding process is cumbersome right now. But we don't feel a compelling need to solve that problem of our own, because we think that there are plenty of bright people in our ecosystem who will solve that as it goes along. And I think that what you find is that if the consumer is ready to demand that content, then they will find a way. So I think back to 2012, when I bought myself a shiny new Samsung Galaxy 3, and it was a really nice phone, top end. And I was living in Hong Kong at the time, lots of credit cards, very well-developed economy, and I went and tried to make a purchase on the Google Play Store, and they don't accept Visa, right? Because that was 2012 on Android, and you couldn't make a transaction. My bank had to try to confirm it, and it was ridiculous. And this was Google, right? First world country. But it took a long time to sort that out. That was already 4 years into mobile gaming on the two dominant platforms. And then Google didn't really sort their stuff out for what? Until 2014 maybe on Android in developing countries, right? If that. So this stuff takes time. So I'm not afraid of the onboarding process right now. Right? This is actually exciting because I know it will get solved, but I also know I don't need to be the one to solve it because Dapper and you guys, everybody else is working on this problem and it will be solved. But give it 12 to 18 months.
Certainly, so on that sort of note, for such a nascent technology, there is so much in the way of progress from talented individuals and companies that are really trying to streamline the approach. So, as we previously discussed, we've got Dapper trying to really help to provide a viable alternative for MetaMask, which was the Ethereum stable for a while. On the EOS side of things, you've got the Decred standard, you've got Wax blockchain that's trying to link up all these things. So progress is underway, it's just these things take time.
Yeah, I think when it comes to creating an easier onboarding process, what people might need to get away from the thought that it's going to be fully decentralized and you're going to own your own private keys and all of that kind of thing, because it's probably not. Like if you don't have a blockchain account, you don't know anything about blockchain, and you sign in with through Scatter, for example, which they're bringing out some really interesting features that will allow you to say sign with Facebook or your email or your number, then they'll create a custodial wallet for you. Like you'll be able to access the application, it'll work perfectly, and they'll manage all your private keys on your behalf. And I think the point is that people don't care about, users don't. We always say in the office when a game studio comes in, we're interested in great games that use blockchain. We're not interested in great blockchain games. So like that custodial side is taken care of by the app, and the users don't care. They don't even care what blockchain is on. They just care, like you guys have said, that they can take advantage of those features. And actually, one of our investments, the recent one we made, Azarus, is a great example of this. So Azarus is an engagement platform built on the Twitch extensions, right? And so what it enables people to do, let's say you're watching an esport game and the round ends, Azarus will pop up in the top right corner saying, how many headshots did so-and-so get in the last round? and gives you like 10 seconds to answer. This has increased engagement on streams by like 10x. Like this is really interesting. So Ubisoft incubated a project. They're launching this on Rainbow Six Siege as a pilot. Seeing really, really good results. But the point is that when you get into Azure, you only need to do is sign in with Twitch. It's all blockchain based, but the user only needs to sign in with Twitch. The tokens can be on blockchain or not. They are in this case, and they're redeemable in stores for real in-game items, which is driving that user engagement. And brands love that. But the onboarding process is seamless. So I think those are really good points, guys. And I want to open up the floor for questions. So if anyone has any questions, put your hand up.
One of the things I'm inspired about in the blockchain world is that it's bringing together transnational communities. It's providing a way for communities of people who don't sit inside national boundaries to exchange value. And I also see gaming like that as well, because it's creating, it is communities of people who don't sit inside national borders. Now obviously over time, people are just going to get used to the idea of existing financially and emotionally in communities that don't sit inside national borders. How is that going to affect when they go, political processes and people's perception of the world around them? Open question.
It's quite a philosophical one, isn't it? Well, yeah, I mean, the entire thing is like, it goes into the whole political philosophies of what we conceive as being a modern nation state, and the fact that any sort of decentralized solution is going to immediately put a spanner in the works of that. I mean, you need only look at the world of like financial tech and how blockchain is going into that. And I like to irritate people sometimes because, I mean, somebody's going to clearly get me wrong on this one, but the whole reason that governments in the Western Hemisphere have such a problem with things like cryptocurrencies is because it's the truest form of capitalism and sound money. In that it's completely sovereign to the individual and is theirs, and under their autonomy alone they're able to give it to other people. So it's generally an interesting question. I don't think there's a short answer to that one, other than the fact that exactly, yeah. It's kind of like how you go into a cinema and you go and watch a movie and you go out there asking more questions than you leave with. And I think that's kind of, we're seeing right now how governments are having to really answer that question at the moment. And their attempts to really break the bones of what regulations they have to fit cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology go to show that even they don't have the answers just yet.
Ready Player One is my answer. I think it's going to be difficult in the physical world. I mean, being a child of the 90s, sort of formative years, I think we all thought, I thought by this time we had passports that were independent of nations and all that sort of stuff. Then I think that 9/11 happened and it's sort of not really happened and worked out as I thought it might. But I think that threshold, that transformation will take place in the virtual world. I think we'll see, as people start to spend more and more time in VR, we start to get real multi-scale VR. Then I think that's the place that nation states will break down, and that will form new forms of democracy and power by blockchain. So that's the place I'd look to first before we start moving land boundaries. I mean, we can't even get Brexit right.
Oh my God, we went all the way until now, until Brexit came up. That's fantastic. I think the only thing I'd comment on as far as nation states go is we're based in Hong Kong, and a lot of our shareholders and fans and enthusiasts and supporters are based in Asia, and I do feel like Asia is a little bit of a, with all due respect to Shane's comments earlier about London, I do think Asia is a little bit of a center of gravity for blockchain, particularly fintech driven, and I think particularly North Asia, so China, Japan, and Korea. And as we've seen, they've been very crypto-friendly from a regulatory standpoint. And I think that's also because as formerly developing or still developing economies, they're open to alternatives, right? Because there's not so much of an entrenched norm of the way that these transactions are cultivated, and there's not so much of a sort of boxing out and building of walls by the entrenched players, so they're embracing it, right? Which is why obviously China is leading the edge of mobile payments, because it didn't have to replace anything. There wasn't anything before that, right? Which is why we also see some hesitancy by the government in terms of blockchain adoption, because if they just open the gates, it's already the biggest cryptocurrency market in the world, even though it's illegal, right? So we see what's going to happen there.
And even if you move slightly back from government and just look at iOS and Android, I'm sure you guys have got experience with trying to embed cryptocurrencies into an app on iOS or Android, and they'll tell you, well, we can't figure out how to take the 30% that we usually take on those transactions.
Yeah.
So, even that at a platform level, which is really what we're talking about, games and developing games and deploying them, that's really one of the major challenges. Like, it's not just iOS and Android, VR plays on Oculus, they want to monetize those transactions as well, and I think that they're probably trying to figure out where they can kind of corner the market, figure out where they can maybe have their own wallet, take the 30% before it even leaves. But that's a real challenge for gaming companies.
But just to follow on, because I'm not going to specifically answer that question because that's far too grandiose, to be honest with you. But I would say that it's changing from a games perspective. This will have a fundamental shift in terms of what do we define as our segments of our audience or our users, because today we see them purely as players. We may actually take it one step further and we'll in the sort of free-to-play world, we'd call them the spenders and the non-spenders. But that's pretty much it. Whereas in the future there will be all sorts of types. There will be consumers of the content, there will be people who are actually working it as well. There will be people working in a game who have nothing to do with the original developers, but they will be essentially on a side hustle or whatever it is, earning something within the game economy, and doing that wherever they land in the world, because they can, and because we can exchange value with them, or other people can exchange value with them. So the whole, what is a gamer is going to change.
The very notion of what you refer to as a gamer will also change. I think it was in the previous panel we were talking about how blockchain is designed for the emerging world, those that are unbanked. And I think where we're going to be seeing a lot more gamers that are involved in side hustle within these titles, a couple of examples that really come to mind are in Reality Clash, we able to build gun recipes, Nine Lives Arena, where the entire premise of some people playing on that game is just because they have a unique skin recipe, they can craft and sell on. What we think of as being a gamer in that ecosystem is going to transform significantly. And I think this is kind of one of the ways in which the blockchain gaming space is at the tip of the spear when it comes to innovation and how blockchain can help these emerging markets. Because if somebody based out of China who's originally a gold farmer on World of Warcraft suddenly finds Nine Lives Arena and decides, okay, great, I can go ahead and just flip stuff on this, completely legit and completely immutable. The profits are their own in that sort of way. I think that would be kind of remarkable. And I know it's kind of dragging on as well, but going to the previous point as well about iOS, Google Play, there was a talk that, I think it was Gareth Jenkins, and he was previously of Novotoken. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that, but what he said was that some blockchain games are going to have this kind of intersection point, whether they choose to really work in conjunction with these app stores and take the brunt of that 30% hit, or they try and go off with their own way. And either which way, it's an arduous road, but it would be remarkable to see what kind of transformations they can make in the space if they choose either which.
Just to sort of quantify that side hustle, the World of Warcraft gold miners, for those of you who don't know, just in China alone, that was about $100 million US marketplace, and that was over a decade ago. And it was enormous when $100 million was a lot of money in gaming. And so that gives you an idea of the extent that if you sort of transform the analogy a little bit, think of that like mining in crypto, because what those people are doing is they're grinding in games to make a living. And so if you transform that into mining NFTs by creating content, through some kind of online tool, then we can see how blockchain fits into that analogy very well. And just imagine how big a $100 million economy in World of Warcraft mining can be 10 years later with all the tools we have available now with blockchain and mobile.
Quick question here. Any Grand Theft Auto fans in the room? Not many. That might be an American thing, but as you guys know, Grand Theft Auto 5 was the most highest generating product in terms of entertainment in general, even more than movies, more than Titanic, more than Avatar. 6 billion in revenue. So it just makes me want to ask you guys, how far are we from being able to collaborate with Rockstar, with Square Enix, with Konami, with Bandai, with the guys who can really push for mass adoption?
I can kick that one off. So, we work very closely with Ubisoft and their incubator program. These guys, Ubisoft is probably the most forward-thinking on this out of the AAA games publishers. But they have their innovation labs, which are looking at technologies that they probably don't plan to integrate into their own games for maybe 3 to 5 years. But I can tell you that they're very active in looking at projects that come from the incubator and putting them on EOS.io. In fact, the Azurus investment I just spoke about was through their program. And you may have seen the recent announcement. I'm not sure, it wasn't from Ubisoft themselves, but they were experimenting with blockchain-based assets. I doubt it will be in one of their existing games. I just think the infrastructure shift for that is too great, but I think games going forward, you can definitely see something out of those guys. In terms of, I think what you're saying is mainstream games that people really want to play. I say great games that are enabled by blockchain.